Awesome. Welcome, 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 everyone. As you all are entering this space, I would love for you all to drop where you all are from. And also, because it's summertime, what's your favorite fruit for this summer in the chat for me, please. As I go through our introductions and a few housekeeping matters. So my name is Mylon Sullivan. I will be your moderator for today's webinar called Effective Communication with Motivational Interviewing Strategies. This webinar comes out of Intact's Community Wellness Peer Support and Training Academy. I love it. Indiana water. I love watermelon too. I don't know if you've ever tried it. Try watermelon juice. It's amazing. We could go to the next slide, please. Just want to go over a disclaimer. So this presentation was prepared under a cooperative agreement with SAMHSA. We ask that you do not reproduce any of our materials without permission, but the presentation will be recorded and posted on our website. The views and the information that's presented in this presentation are from the author, Sal Corbin, and does not represent the official views of SAMHSA or the Department of Health and Human Services. Oh, I love it. They're coming in. I love all these chats. So just in case there's any security issues, we don't believe that there will be, but if there are any security issues, we'll close out the session and send everybody a new link where they can come back into the webinar. Can go to the next one. And so as you all see, there are 8 amazing organizations that come together to create the products and services of Intact. So a little bit about our vision and services. Our vision is that all children, youth, and families living with and impacted by mental health challenges will have access to the resources and opportunities they need to thrive in a comprehensive and equitable system of care. And as you can see, Intact provides a wealth of different services, from podcasts to practical tools and products, to individualized consultations and webinars, and much, much more. So feel free to come to our website and check out all of our services and products. Thank you. So you will automatically receive a certificate of completion at the end of this webinar. You will also receive a copy of the presentation, which you've already received. We'll send it again within 2 business days. There will be a copy of the presentation as well. And so you will also receive in that email any resources that are listed. Dark cherries, I love that. Columbus, Ohio. Okay, Buckeye States, I love it. We can go to the next one. So I have the pleasure of introducing Sal Corbin. He has 15 years of experience in academia as a psychology professor before transitioning to nonprofit work. He's currently serving as a training coordinator for the Maryland Harm Reduction Institute within the behavioral health system of Baltimore. He's played a leading role in workforce development in the Baltimore/DC area, training hundreds of behavioral health providers. Sal has served as board chair for the DC Peace Team, where his vision is centered on helping individuals build and maintain healthy relationships through conflict transformation. Sal's extensive expertise in leadership facilitation and his dedication to fostering positive change enables him to make meaningful contributions to his community. He holds a degree in clinical psychology and a doctorate in educational psychology. And so without further ado, I will turn over today's session to Sal Corbin.
Thank you, Mylon. Appreciate that very much. First of all, can everybody hear me? Got to make sure I'm not just talking to myself. Thank you, Ashley. I appreciate that. Hey, look, Today's topic is one that I'm extremely passionate about, that probably all of my personal and professional selves and identities merge into this topic in terms of supporting others. So I will speak as passionately as I can to you today. But as much as I love to talk, please, at any time you have a question, put that in the Q&A. I think I was told not to unmute, but to put it in the Q&A. But however, I believe in not leaving any child behind. So it serves me no purpose to move ahead if somebody has a question lingering from the past. Plus, I really want this conversation to meet your needs, right? So it doesn't matter what my agenda is. If you have specific questions regarding the practice or application of this, or even the theoretical foundation for it, please feel free to chime in at any time. So I appreciate you being here with me today. This is a loose agenda of what we're going to mention, at least. I don't know how much time, if any, we'll have for the final bullet of practice, but we'll see what we can do when we get to that point. If we have time and there's not enough time for practice, then possibly I can do a demo with somebody that might be a willing volunteer. Okay, so what are we trying to achieve today? Well, we'd like to understand, well, first of all, what does it mean to help somebody else in terms of changing their behaviors, right? Which isn't an easy thing to do. So we're going to go over the stages of change model. We're going to talk about harm reduction and why motivational interviewing is such an important tool to support that movement, what motivational interviewing is, and some of the strategies that are involved. Hopefully, with the time that we have, if I do things right, we'll get through all of that. But I'm going to start off with an opening phrase today to get you to think about motivational interviewing, and that comes from The Wizard of Oz. This specifically from a rock group in the 1970s, and yes, I am dating myself, that said the Wizard of Oz never gave the lion, the Tin Man, or the Scarecrow that which they did not already possess, which means that your client or the people that you're supporting are considered to be their own best expert. There is a school of thought in education called idealism. Idealism believes that our thoughts and ideas can change the world, but that we already have all of the information we need to do that. So in essence, I'm not teaching you or training you on a thing today. All I'm doing is unleashing that which you already know. And that is the idea behind motivational interviewing. And this is misleading because of the title, which I'm getting ready to address. But this is a strengths-based approach in which you are unleashing the constructive agent in the people that you're supporting. So you're not swooping in there with your cape with the S on it, saving anybody, changing anybody. And really, and this is why the title can be so misleading, you're not really even motivating them. You're providing a safe platform for them to explore their own issues and behaviors and reach decisions on what they want to change. For those of you who don't know, changing behavior is not as easy as it sounds. It's easier to think about it. It's easier to talk about it, but to do it is a transition that takes a lot of what we call persistence of effort. And just think of any habit you've ever wanted to change within yourselves. Mine was biting my nails. It took me years to get on the other side of that. And every once in a while, guess what? I'll be sitting in a meeting board or something, and the next thing I know, I'm chewing on my nails. Why? Because those neuronal pathways are set in my brain from years of conditioning. And yes, I have walked a new path where I don't need to bite my nails. However, the old path is still there, just waiting to be accessed. The new one hasn't been walked as much. So you need to be considerate of that and sensitive to other people's change. Okay, so what do we know about behavior change? And folks, before you start thinking of this in terms of others, think of this in terms of yourselves. I'm not calling anybody out today, but think of anything that you've tried to change in your life. right? It's usually not an overnight process. And the ones that are overnight processes usually are preceded by something traumatic, right? Where you don't need to spend a lifetime learning it. So first of all, and I'm going to add to this particular slide. First of all, in order for behavior change to occur with a human being, and being human is flawed, which means we don't always get it right, two things must occur. First of all, the person, the individual, not you as the provider or helper or supporter, the person has to see it as something that they want to change. They got to recognize it as an issue or problem that they want to look different or better. All right, you can be a cheerleader, but they have to recognize it. This is why denial is so powerful, because when we deny that it's an issue, there's nothing to fix. Does that make sense? So that's the first rule of thumb. The second rule of thumb is that the person has to want to do something about it. There's a difference between recognizing it or acknowledging it and then wanting to change it. Like if you identify, this is an example, not to offend any smokers, but let's say if I smoke and I say, okay, hey, I recognize smoking's bad, that recognition does not translate into action. Then I got to want to do something about it, which means I need to access resources or help to get that done. So it's not an easy process. So first of all, it's difficult. It can be very time consuming. It all happens at an individual pace. I'm sorry, but if anybody ever comes to you and says, hey, I did it, so can you, there is absolutely no foundation whatsoever that supports that statement, because we are all individuals. And so, yes, while it might have worked for somebody else, does not necessarily mean it's going to work for you in the same way or the same timeline. Now, can that be a motivation? Absolutely. And probably the closer you are in characteristic to the person that just said that to you, that's probably more likely. But it happens for us all individually. And we need to create the space for people to explore that. Now, that's difficult when you're in a supportive position, when you feel like the person needs to change much quicker than that. Well, folks, sad to say, and I hear you, I'm a support agent. It's not your journey, right? So you need to move into a space to support their own decision-making and the timeline that supports that. That's hard to do sometimes as a professional, because we may have deadlines, we may have outcome measures, we may have supervisors, et cetera, that are wanting us to create something different in a shorter period of time. So we've already talked about the fact that getting it upstairs, knowledge alone is insufficient, right? Just saying that it's a problem. In fact, a lot of people acknowledge they have a problem, and then they got an attitude. Yeah, I smoke. So what? What about you? I mean, so, and again, I'm just using smoking loosely, not to offend anybody in the audience if you smoke. So getting it upstairs isn't enough, right? How do you translate that into action that is different or better than before? And the other thing, and I mostly work in recovery, and in recovery, we accept that relapse is normal and expected, not encouraged, but normal and expected as part of the change process. This is important because historically, and up to the 90s, if you weren't abstinent in your recovery for whatever you were trying to recover from, the professional world assumed that you, and especially the legal world, the policy and procedure world, assumed that you weren't serious about your change. You weren't serious about recovery, and you wouldn't be able to either get admitted to programs or stay in programs. We now understand and accept that relapse is normal and expected. And again, we can go back to that original example of those neuronal pathways and me biting my nails, right? Every once in a while, we take a step back. It's not because we want to go backwards, but rather those pathways are still ingrained in our brain. And guess what? When we get overtaxed, when we get exhausted, when we get tired, when we get taxed out, guess what we refer to? We go back to our default. We go back to that which we know the best. This is why, and then a lot of people a lot of times will question, well, why kids that are, let's say, abused, why are they more likely to grow up and abuse their kids? Well, if they've never been offered healthy alternatives to that, they go to what they know. It's not that they don't know that it's wrong. It's not that they don't feel bad about it. It's that they don't know anything different, right? We haven't offered them anything different. This is why access to resources and the support to honor those resources is so important in the work that we do. Okay, so relapse is normal and expected, again, not encouraged. And I gave you that African proverb that the devil you know is better than the angel you don't. That just means that, you know, what we are accustomed to in terms of our quote unquote bad habits, that's why they're so hard to break, right? It's not because we don't recognize they may not be good for us. And just think about your eating habits. That's my bias right there. And I work out all the time, but staying on a healthy nutrition regimen, like day to day, is hard, especially when I see ice cream and some other things that I enjoy, right? Like, yeah, I mean, and pizza, okay, and forget vacation. All that discipline goes right out the window because I'm trying to have a good time. So the devil you know is better than the angel you don't. It's difficult, right? So if we agree that behavioral change is difficult, then as support agents, and I say that loosely because I know we all have very different roles probably in this room, but whatever your role is, you need to be considerate of that in terms of supporting somebody else, right? Give them the grace that you would want somebody to give to you. And if you don't know what that's like, you think of a problem behavior that you have or have had. Think of how you wanted to be helped. That is, how did you want people to show up for you to help you with that particular issue? All the things that were considered in that. And that's what you also need to do when you create the space for somebody else. It's that simple. Now, I'm not saying it's simple to do. I'm saying it's simple to envision. Okay. All right. How are we doing? Let me just pause there because I was preaching and see if there's any questions in the chat before I continue. We're okay? All righty. Thank you, Milan. Appreciate that. Milan gave me the thumbs up, so I'm going to keep moving. Now, this particular technique is called motivational interviewing, one of the greatest misnames I've ever come across, at least in my professional history, and I'll tell you why. For all the reasons that I said before, technically, you're not motivating them to do anything. It's not your motivation that we're talking about. It's what? Their motivation that we're talking about. I'm talking about the people that we're supporting, the clients, the customers, the participants, whatever your title is for them. So it's about their motivation, but it comes across like we as helping agents and the people in this room, I assume, are mostly supporters, right? They want to help people get to a better place. So they think it's their motivation. They're motivating the client to get there. Nope. It is all about them. They are their own best expert, and you are providing the space for them to explore that. So if it was up to me, which it is not, I would call motivational interviewing one of these three terms that I have on the slide in front of you, because I think it more accurately captures what this supportive relationship should look like. It should be called reflective interviewing, meaning in this conversation with the person that you're supporting, it's a dialogue between you and the person that you're helping, and you should be reflecting on what they're saying all the time, validating what they're saying all the time, helping them to explore options. So there's the second term for you, exploratory interviewing, right? So you're exploring options, finding out what makes sense and what is doable for the person that you're helping. Or supportive interviewing. I'm okay with any of those terms. Unfortunately, I didn't get to name this, but those are just a better way of, it's kind of a reframing of motivational interviewing. Now, I'm not going to go deep into these models of treatment. This isn't a psychology class. And I know in my description, it said I used to be in academia, but what is important about this is we need to understand where this comes from. And so these models of treatment that are before you are the original schools of thought in psychology. There are numerous, many more that have come since. So this is not a promotion of anything. I just want you to go back to the original schools of thought and how they differ from each other, because motivational interviewing actually comes from the humanistic perspective. But I'll say them very briefly, just so you know what I'm talking about. The medical model basically assumes that whatever your behavior you're trying to change is of your physiology, your neuroanatomy, your hormones, your nervous system, all of that. And so the treatment for that is what? Medical. And you're considered a patient. So there's going to be something that you're going to take, including medication, that will alter your chemistry to help you deal with that behavior. Psychodynamic perspective from Sigmund Freud, whether you love him or hate him, Freud is the one that put psychology on the map worldwide. But he had some really bizarre belief systems that centered on, who you are as an adult has everything to do with your childhood and anything left unresolved from it. So if you want to understand who you are as an adult now, you got to go back and understand your upbringing, your relationship with your parents, and all of that. The behavioral perspective that followed that rejected all of that childhood influence, said, no, it's not. Human behavior isn't in your childhood. It's you learned how to be that way. It could have started there, but you can learn things as an adult. Not all of our bad habits came from childhood, right? So if you learned how to be a particular way, you can unlearn it. If you grew up in an alcoholic family and you learn to adopt that particular behavior, you can unlearn it. So it's very straightforward, and that requires reinforcement, different modeling, different conditioning. The cognitive perspective is basically your thoughts. And if you want to change somebody's actions, you got to change the way they think first. Why? Because thoughts precede actions. We just actually identified that earlier, right? We said one piece of behavior change is what? Getting it upstairs. This is a problem and I want it to look different. And then the second piece, what? Is to actually do something about it. So, and that's why, you probably are more familiar with the term cognitive behavioral therapy. They originally were actually two distinct schools of thought. But the cognitive perspective says, hey, you want to change somebody's behavior, you got to get inside somebody's head and stop playing all of those recordings that are going on up there, get them some new ones. Now, the eclectic model at the bottom is just a catch-all. It just says it's a little bit of everything. I want to talk about the humanistic perspective briefly because that's where motivational interviewing comes from. You all, and I'm sure everybody in here has probably taken a Psych 101 course at some point, and you remember this pyramid from Abraham Maslow. It was called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's been largely challenged and altered since then, but this is the original 5-tier model. The way this particular model worked was you had to meet the lower level needs first before you moved up. And so actually, I don't want to go into the model itself, except for the third level, connectedness. See, my whole pitch, my whole reason for supporting this movement and the work that I do is I believe it comes down to connection. How we connect with others, how we view and perceive others in relationship. I think that's the way you change the world, and it's also the most difficult way to do it. However, when you don't feel connected in that third level, it's void. Guess what? That's where your vices come from. That's when you try to fill it up with whatever you can get: food, drink, sex, religion, politics, whatever. That's where people try to find their worth when they don't feel fully connected, is they'll try to fill it up with whatever they can because they want to feel full, right? Now, the reason I mention that is because we're talking about behavior change. And for the most part, probably 99% of behavioral change are things that we want to look different or better, right? So there's where the vices live. The reason I mention this is because Maslow, this next person, Carl Rogers, was a student of Abraham Maslow. And Carl Rogers was the one that developed a therapeutic model for helping people. Again, Carl Rogers believed, he called it the humanistic or the existential model, that personal growth is what leads to self-fulfillment. What he's saying there is that, again, they are their own best expert. They need to find their own worth and growth in order to feel fulfilled, that third level, right? Incongruent just means that who we present ourselves to be and who we actually are often separate circles because of the way society is constructed. Everybody's trying to act and look like something that they're not. And the goal there is to get those those circles to overlap, right? So who we say we are is who we actually are. That's called congruence. Unconditional positive regard, just babble for total acceptance. Total acceptance means not total agreement of what's going on in front of you or what your client might be saying. It means total acceptance, which means I accept this is where you are with this particular issue on your journey. That's why this is important in terms of motivational interviewing. It doesn't matter where they are, especially in relation to you. It is their journey, their walk, and you need to orient yourself in a way that you're walking with them. How do you do that? Have some empathy. Try to see yourself in their shoes. Identify what they must be going through, which means you must also identify with what is missing. Maybe they had a missing parent. Maybe they had an alcoholic mom or a cheating brother or whatever. You have to imagine what those things can do to you. That's empathy. Empathy is being able to see the world from their perspective, from their shoes, for understanding. Them taking personal responsibility for their actions. So you are not the change agent. They are the change agent for themselves, and you are the supporter. That's what we call client or person-centered therapy. And the primary technique by which you achieve that is reflection. Reflection means you are taking everything that they give you, putting it into your own words, and offering it back to them. And then that way they can validate that you've got it right, and you can move them to a better informed place to support them. Okay, let me just pause there. How are we doing in the chat? Any questions, anything? All righty, keep moving then. Most of you are probably familiar with this model, the stages of change model. It's what we call a transdynamic or transactional model, which means that while it looks like it's linear, it in fact is not. You can enter and exit these stages at any time, depending on where you are and what's going on in your world. But I will present them as if they are linear, and I will use the example of physical fitness or exercise because everybody can relate to that one. Pre-contemplation is when exercise is not even on your cognitive radar. Don't care about it, not looking for it. Not that you're not aware of it, it's just not a priority for you. So pre-contemplation is before it even moves into a place of importance for you. Contemplation is when you recognize, yeah, you know what? Exercise is a good thing and I probably should be doing it, which means it's now moved into that realm of that first stage I told you about, right? Acknowledging that something is an issue. So you have to deem its importance, its value, right? First, before you can do something about it. So that's contemplation. Determination is actually coming up with some people call this stage planning. So you come up with a plan. Well, you know what? I've been driving by that new gym down the block every day. Maybe I should stop in there and take a visit. Maybe I should order or those streamed Pilates or yoga or cycling videos or tapes. Or yeah, I guess everything is streamed now. So right. So those recordings, right? So that I can begin this journey. So you haven't taken action yet, but now it's moved into the realm of I'm going to do something about it. New Year's resolutions fall into this stage. And notice what happens with New Year's resolutions. They are crazy out the chart in January, it's skyrocketing, right? And what happens in February? Most of them have already fallen through the cracks, right? So getting it from here to action, that's the next stage. When you finally do something about it, you have now moved into action. Action means you actually do stop at that gym and meet with a fitness instructor or have your first workout. You buy that elliptical machine and put it in your basement. You order those streamed webinars on cycling, whatever. You've actually moved into action, done something about it. The problem with action is that it too can fall through the cracks if it's not maintained. So you'll notice 2 stages up is maintenance. If you can get the action, the exercise into a maintenance stage, that means it's now habitual. It's an habitual part of your lifestyle. You'll probably always do it and miss it when you don't. Between action and maintenance, notice is relapse, right? So you can fall off the wagon. You don't always reach maintenance, but you can fall off and get back on. It really depends. Remember, we have established relapse as a normal and expected part of this change model. Now, I'll give you a great example. I'll use a personal example for me. Drinking enough water. There would be something that I struggle with all the time. And probably that's because I love juice and I love, sugar in my drinks, which is not a healthy thing for me. So I'm constantly recognizing that I need more water. Now, I need to drink more water. Now, at some point, I didn't really care when I was a younger man, because when you're a younger person, you can get away with a lot of stuff. But wait till you hit your 40s and 50s, y'all. It's a coming, and things will start to slow down significantly. And the things that you did the day before are going to show up on you the next day. So, anyways, having said that, I am painfully aware that I need to drink more water. My plan before I took action was, well, you know what? If I have more water in front of me, I'm probably going to drink it more. So the action that I took, I loaded up the fridge and the pantry. There's water all up and down my pantry. And when you open my refrigerator door, there's all kinds. You would be so impressed if you came to my place and opened the refrigerator door. You'd be like, wow, look at all this water. And you know what I'd say? Yeah, look at it. Because there ain't much more happening to it. So which means that just because it's in front of me doesn't mean necessarily that I'm drinking more, but it was an action step that I took to try to encourage that behavior. Do I drink more water as a result? Absolutely. Am I monitoring how much that is? Is it whatever they recommend, 6 to 8 glasses a day? Probably not, and I wouldn't know because I'm not counting. Do I relapse? Well, sometimes. I mean, I love juice, so I do drink juice. I've pretty much eliminated soda from my diet. The only time I usually drink soda is if I'm out or if I'm, having pizza or wings or something like that. So it's very specific. I don't bring any soda into the house. But I wouldn't say by any means that I have reached maintenance with adequate water drinking. Right. I'm just not there yet. I dip between action and relapse. Right. So am I doing better than what I was before? Absolutely. But still not there. So there's a personal example of the stages of change. Remember, and this is important, folks, even though I gave you a personal example, the stages of change model is not about you. It is simply a framework for you to understand the person that you're supporting. It's about them. Does that make sense? Meaning, yeah, this is not about your stages of change. It's about their stages of change, right? So it helps you identify where they are, and then have conversations with them about how to support them and move into a different place. Okay, let me just pause there for a minute. Mylon, how we doing? Okay, all right. Well, I appreciate y'all. This is a good crowd. I don't have to act like I know what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's go through a few definitions of motivational interviewing. And these aren't the right ones. There's many more, but I really enjoy these in particular. So one, arranging conversations so that people talk themselves into change based on their own values and interests. Arranging conversations so that people talk themselves into change based on their own values and interests. That's a really nice wording for everything that I've tried to present so far. The second one, a collaborative conversation style for strengthening a person's own motivation and commitment to change. Remember, we talked about this is about them and their motivation, but I love the term collaborative. So again, remember walking with, conversation for strengthening a person's own motivation and commitment to change. My version of this, folks, is what I call in your corner. Like if you start working with me, I'm likely, whether as a friend or professionally, I'm likely to say I'm in your corner. And what do I mean by that is just like a boxing ring, right? Yeah, I'm the person that's, going to take care of you when you come back from each round. Now, you got to fight the fight. I can't fight the fight for you. It doesn't matter if you knock the other person out or get knocked out. I'm still going to be in your corner. And if something didn't go right, let's talk about that. Hopefully that makes sense. And then the third definition, kindness with skill. I like that one. Kindness with skill. So you're not just sitting there doing nothing, being nice to the person, accepting everything that they give you. You are in conversation with them about how they want to change their lives for the better. Okay. Now, I want to be very clear because a lot of times people in the helping professions will go after their own goals for the person. Now, this is a really, really important point that I want to make, folks. And that's admirable and that's honorable. I get it because, right, we want to be helping agents, we want to see them do better, etc. But what we often do in these helping positions is we, one, assume the need and then move into a space to try to create that. Folks, that's not motivational, that's manipulative. That's your agenda and not theirs. And this is a fine line. It's very gray, right? Because we have outcomes, we have, performance measures. There's things that we're supposed to be doing. We're not just sitting there talking to people for talk's sake, right? So here's the way I look at it. And I've worked in homelessness, and a lot of people used to ask me, well, how do you talk to an unhoused person? And I used to say, I talk to them the same way that I talk to everybody else. Hey, how you doing today? Yeah, what's going on with you? Because here are the typical responses that I've heard for people that are unhoused and people that pass them on the street. I'm not going to give them anything. They need to give themselves a job. I'm not going to give them change or money, but I'll buy them some food. Here's my dad. They need a kick in the ass. That's what they need. And that'll make them as if you actually did that would make them want to go get housed. It's just ridiculous things that I've heard. Now, the reason I mention those folks, and I'm not going to give them change because all they're going to do is go buy alcohol. Okay, got it. Notice how you have determined not only the need, but the outcome for that person, right? I don't know if any of you in this room have ever had to ask somebody for money because you were broke or close to it. I certainly have in my lifetime. And you know what? When I had to ask for it, nobody that ever gave me anything followed me around to make sure I spent the money the way I asked for it. Not once. They just gave me the money. The point I'm trying to make here is when you are trying to help somebody, don't assume their need. You're talking about okay, I'm not going to give them money, but I'll buy them a sandwich. Well, first of all, are they even hungry? Let's start with that. Do they even like sandwiches? Let's start with that. You have assumed all of this stuff for the person. And I'm going to tell you something about the unhoused in Washington, D.C. They're not hungry. I'm just telling you, they're not. There are so many places for them to go to get fed for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and in between snacks. And they know where to go. Hunger isn't one of their issues for the unhoused, not in DC, right? And so the point I'm trying to make here is if you truly want to support somebody, first of all, why don't you recognize them and say hi? Half of us in this room don't even speak to our neighbors that live next door. Say hi to them and just have a normal conversation. Boy, it's really hot out here today, isn't it? If there's a need that's there, they'll express that to you. You don't need to assume that for them. Enroll them in their own recovery, right? Bring them into the conversation. Maybe they appreciate the fact that you're sitting there having a normal conversation with them, and they value that more than any kind of change in your pocket that could help them, right? You know why? Because they are what's called an invisible group. We tend to ignore them. We tend to judge them. We tend to pass them by. And so many unhoused people would say it'd be nice if people just stopped and said hi. But again, don't assume their need. Enroll them in that. Find out if it's something that you can support, and you can have an honest conversation about what you can do to help them. Folks, just because you identify the need doesn't mean you can always meet it. You might say to me, hey, I need $100, so, and I'd be like, well, I'm sorry, I don't have 100. I got a 20. Would that help you? I mean, it allows for an informed conversation about what you can and can't provide. That's an authentic relationship, folks. It's not about saying yes to everything. In fact, I do workshops on how do you say no in this profession. Okay, how are we doing, May? Yes, thank you.
Before we go to the next slide, there are two questions.
Yes.
One is, can you give an example of motivational interviewing for smoking cessation?
for somebody to stop smoking?
Mhm.
Oh, sure, sure, sure. Well, are they asking me to demo it, or are they asking me just to say what I would say, what I would do?
It just says give an example.
Okay. So first of all, I would get a baseline for how much they're smoking. Now, well, actually, let me back up. The first thing that I would do is I would build rapport and trust with that client, whatever that means in the time that I have, right? Because they're not going to disclose to me unless they have some type of trusting relationship with me, right? So let's start there. Now, I understand that we have different time guidelines for that, but you work with what you have. So, okay, so I first build relationship. Second, I would get a baseline for how much they're smoking. Third, I would ask, where are they trying to go with that? Are they trying to smoke? If they're, I'm making this up, if they're smoking 4 packs a day, they're trying to get to 3, or they're trying to get to 2, or maybe they're trying to get to abstinence. And then the next thing to do is to explore what is doable for them and the resources that are available. What is doable for them if they're trying to go from 4 packs to 3, and what resources are in place to support that. There is a strategy I'm going to talk about a little bit later called scaling that will reflect what I just said. I hope that was helpful in the short. We can spend more time with that a little later if you'd like. I hope that was helpful.
They did clarify specifically wanting a demo.
Okay, so we can do that when I get to the scaling slide, which is a little bit later, and I can demo that. So if somebody would like to volunteer, you don't have to be an actual smoker. You can pretend to be one. Then that would be helpful. And yeah, we'll do that. Okay, great. Thank you for that.
And our second question is, what's the difference between motivational interviewing and motivational enhancement therapy?
Well, I'm not familiar enough with motivational enhancement therapy to fully answer that. So you'd have to explain exactly what the goal of motivational enhancement therapy is. That's not something that I'm skilled at. So if they don't mind sharing, I'd love to hear what that's about.
You should be able to keep going until we get some more information.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, now, one of the things that is helpful so that the supportive relationship doesn't become manipulative on your part as a helping agent is what I call matching, trying to find a supportive agent that matches the client as much as possible. There's something called, let me see if I can, it's called the law of similarity. Now, I'm not proposing this as law for everybody, but most people believe that we are better influenced by and supported by people that look like us, sound like us, same characteristics, similar backgrounds. And I agree with that for the most part. What I don't agree with is that, so in other words, if we're supporting people of color, we should have supporting agents that are of color. If you have female clients, then you should have female supporters, and you should try to match those up as much as possible because the perspective matches. They have similar histories enough where they can speak the same language. Now, is that the end of it? Absolutely not. So I think it's and somebody was asking me about motivational enhancement. I think it's something that enhances the relationship, but it is not an instant fix. Meaning, just because you put a black supporter with a black client doesn't mean everything is great. What it does matter more is what's called goodness of fit. So you should try to match people as much as you possibly can, but determine whether or not the relationship is a good fit, right? So I've had plenty of people from all different types of persuasions help me out, and and they weren't necessarily of color. They might have been a different gender. But will another black person understand my history, my experience being a black person in this culture? Absolutely. So it's kind of like, I went to pastoral counseling once. This was counseling for me. So this wasn't counseling that I was giving. I've been in counseling for me like 5 or 6 different times in my life for different things. And one of them was a pastoral counselor. I didn't go there for the pastoral part, but it was what was available to me. So that's what I went. And I asked about that. And my counselor said, well, if that's something that is your spiritual walk, if that's something that you want to bring into the therapeutic relationship or conversation, this is a place where you can do that. It's safe for you to express your belief systems and utilize that to help enhance you. But it wasn't necessary. So if I had never mentioned anything Jesus or from a Christian perspective, then that would have been fine. But I could have brought that into the relationship if I wanted to. So, again, I want you to think of matching culturally like that, because what do we know about cultures and people that are impoverished? They're less likely to use mental health services because they don't trust, right? And they don't know it's available to them. Most marginalized populations have a history of being mistreated, of being invisible, or being unknown, right? So less likely to use services, more likely to disengage and terminate because they don't feel like they're understood. They feel more judged, right? And that judgment comes from them not adapting fully to the existing dominant majority culture, right? So we need to be sensitive to that and the people that we're helping. All right. Now, that doesn't mean we need to know everything about every cultural nuance and difference that's out there. That would be impossible. I'm a person of color. That doesn't mean I know everything about people of color, right? But we have an obligation to sensitize and inform ourselves as much as possible. Here are some things that you can do to massage that a little bit. Well, one, I said build rapport and trust. Folks, that means you have to be willing to listen to their stories and not assume their need and start jumping into how you're going to redirect them, right? So build a relationship, listen to their stories, find out where they came from as much as you possibly can. A lot of people ask me, can you share personal information about yourself with your client? Well, sure, but keep it limited. Keep it relevant. You don't want to share your life story. In fact, this is about them, not you. But if you have a story that this is why peer recovery is so powerful, right? Because there's similar stories there, right? You got people that have, who are in recovery or fully recovered, helping others that are there. So some of those stories are relevant. But when you're sharing stories more than they are, or sharing too much personal information, you're now crossing professional boundaries and compromising the clarity of the goals of that relationship. But if you don't know about somebody's background, if you're insensitive about their ethnicity or their culture or their race, it's okay to ask, right? Look, folks, I do workshops on racial equity and anti-racism. That doesn't mean I know everything. I mean, I got to ask sometimes too. There are things I just don't know. Ask respectfully. So usually that means I'm asking for permission. Is it okay if I ask about your Ethiopian heritage, something like that? If they say yes, then it's an open door. If they say I'm uncomfortable with that, then it's a closed door. I move on, right? So inquire. It's okay to ask. How else will you know? You got to do your own research, but personal stories are probably going to be the most effective shares of that. I do a session on grief and loss, and I have a friend of mine I used Ethiopian because that was salient. Who's Ethiopian who lost her brother and sister in the same 24 hours. It was very, very traumatizing. But in their culture, you are expected to show a lot of emotional release due to somebody's passing. So you're not supposed to be silent or quiet and not shed tears. You're supposed to be disheveled by this, and you're supposed to show that. That's part of their culture. And I hope that I presented that correctly. That's just my outside understanding of it as she was explaining it to me. But you need to be sensitive to that, because you might come in there from your perspective talking about, well, why aren't you crying? Right? Like, kind of thing. Well, that, and that may not be part of their culture, their perspective, their upbringing. So you want to be sensitive to those things. Okay. Acknowledging any struggles that you've had or I'm sorry, any that they've had in terms of feeling ashamed about who they are. And folks, pick your ism, pick it. Racism, sexism, ageism. Look, people judge you based on your height and your weight. Okay, so there's all kinds of reasons why people feel ashamed or resentful of the system of the culture that we are in. Become aware of the stigma and stereotypes. So, folks, some of us have multiple identities that have been marginalized, right? Be sensitive to that. And educate yourself. That's important. As many sessions that I'm training and teaching all the time, I'm going to them too. And when I go with my training hat off. I want to be a student like everybody else and learn. Otherwise, I'm going to be in there filtering it through that hat. No, I want to learn and receive the information as raw as anybody else is. Okay. Make sure that it's strength-based. We're going to talk about affirmations here in just a minute. Remember, enroll them in their own recovery. Let them let you know what their needs are, right? Now, a lot of times people will say, well, can I recommend stuff to them? If I'm supposed to be doing is walking with them in a firm, absolutely you can recommend options to them, but don't push your options as an agenda, right? Give them alternatives. They may not know that the gym opened across the street or down the block or whatever. It's okay to explore that, but once they say, like, for example, you might say that. You say, well, there's the gym that just opened. I'm sure they got all kinds of packages. You said you wanted to start working out. And they might say something like, yeah, but that's a ritzy gym and only folks with money go there and looking all pretty and stuff like that. And that makes me feel uncomfortable. I just made that up. But okay, so don't push that anymore. Find other options or resources that are user-friendly to them, right? Everybody's not the same. Okay. We all know yes.
Sorry. So we had a great comment that we wanted to bring to the conversation from one of our audience members, Lindsay. We also need to recognize that often people who use drugs are taught to list abstinence as a goal if they want to continue services, but they don't actually have that goal. You do. And so one of our questions would be, what do you do when your organization wants that goal and maybe the client doesn't? How do you navigate that as a clinician?
This is always, this is always a challenge, right? Because you need to be honest with yourself about your mission, your purpose, and does the organization support that? I'm saying that loosely because I respect the fact that we all need jobs and we need income, right? And sometimes it's not about what we want. I would explore and maximize the flexibility of that mandate as much as possible with my supervisor to make sure that I'm not doing something, because I don't want to do something that's going to affect, my success, my stability, but at the same time, I want to make sure that I support the person as much as possible. There are still abstinence-based models out there. If you're working for an organization where that is their goal, then you might want to question whether or not that's a good place for you to be if you're considerate of other options. Abstinence is not abstinence is an option with me, not the option. It's a healthy thing to pursue, but I don't have somebody looking over my head saying it must be this in order for you to be functional. So it's a tough question to answer. Again, I would explore where my client wants to go. I would also explore, does my organization mandate that that's what I offer the client? And if it is a mandate, again, those are questions you have to answer for yourself in terms of whether or not it's a good fit for the work that you're doing. Because above and beyond anything else, folks, do no harm, right? And if you're sitting there telling people they need to be abstinent, and you don't believe in that, you could be doing more harm than good. That was kind of a round way of answering that question, but I am more than happy to continue that conversation with that person outside this session. Just make sure they have my contact info. It's a great question. It's the same thing with time, right? Like sometimes I'm telling you, build relationship. But look, when I worked for the nonprofit that was supporting the unhoused, when I first started, I was in a rapid rehousing program before I became the training coordinator. And when I first joined that program, they had a year to support their clients, a year. Then they backed it up to 9 months. Then they backed it up to 6 months. I kid you not, when they decided not to renew the contract for that grant anymore, for that program, it was down to 3 months. 3 months to help somebody turn their life around. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know if anybody just turns their life around in 3 months and becomes financially stable. It was an unrealistic expectation. I thought it set them up for our clients, up for failure. So we have to look at those things. And I get, again, I do get the need for needing a job ourselves, but how much can you compromise that? Talk to your supervisors, find out about how much of that is mandated. And thanks for asking that. Mylon, anything else? Okay, let's keep moving. These are the tools of motivational interviewing. We ask open-ended questions. We give affirmations and reflections. I'm going to assume you know what open-ended questions are, but if you don't, open-ended questions basically are questions that ask a person to explain themselves further. So they're beyond yes or no, black or white, up or down. Like it encourages the person to talk more about that. And that could be your question right there. Hey, can you, like, for example, if I say to you, my landlord keeps nagging me about my rent. All right. Can you tell me more about nagging? What does that mean to you? How are you experiencing that? Can you tell me what the expectations are for rent? Or is it due on the first of every month or whatever? Tell them to explain more. That's an open-ended question, because through that, you will get more of the story and can move into a space to help them. Okay. Affirmations. Affirmations. Look, I love affirmations. I affirm people all the time, out the block, up and down, because we live in a world that's the exact opposite of that. This is a cancel culture, criticize you, try to find dirt behind your back, gossiping. It's just a negative society. We're looking for things to judge people on. I affirm them out the. Thank you for coming in. That's an affirmation, right? Wow, you look really great today. That's an affirmation. In your busy schedule, I know it was hard for you to get here today. Thank you. That's an affirmation. Wow, it sounds like you're really going through it, but you're surviving. That's an affirmation. I'm just giving you random examples of affirmations. Let me see if I can do one here. Okay, here you go. I'm just going to do this one real quickly. So, this person is frequently in trouble with the law, causing problems around her apartment complex due to she does not take her prescribed medication to manage her bipolar disorder because it makes her feel too tired to do the things she needs to do. When she remembers, she'll take the correct dosage in the evening prior to going to sleep, but she often loses track of this too amidst her numerous activities. How do you affirm anything in this? Well, first of all, you can affirm the fact that she's coming in to talk about it. You can affirm the fact that she actually is not taking her medication because she wants to accomplish things, right? There's things that she needs to do. She's just not taking her medication. She doesn't care, right? She wants to get it right. She wants to get things done, right? She's got a lot on her plate. So, I appreciate everything that you're dealing with. I appreciate the fact that you don't want to be in trouble with the law. And for those of you who don't know about bipolar, it's a very high maintenance, low conformity disorder to work with. So there's always something to affirm. This is an example of somebody that, and I'm sure most of you could probably that have done frontline service. Bill missed his third scheduled appointment, tried to call him, his phone's out of minutes. 4:45, you're getting ready to leave. You hear a knock on the door. It's Bill. He wants to complete the application you agreed to go over, but he apologizes for missing previous meetings. He's had doctor's appointment, and you asked him if he had conflicts. He said no. That's the summary of this. Oh my gosh, there's so much to. First of all, thank you for making it here today. Even if you can't support him in that moment, hey, let's set up a time where we can get that done. But Bill wants to get his application done for Social Security. And even though he's missed his scheduled appointments with you, why? Because he's had doctor's appointments, not because he's out playing pool somewhere, right? He apologized. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for apologizing. There's all kinds of things. He's wanting to get this right. That's the point. And there's more to, there's all kinds of reasons that we could criticize him, right? Or correct him, or make him feel probably worse than he already does. But that's an example of reflection. Okay. I'm sorry, of affirmation. Reflections are just putting it into your own words and giving it back to them. Carl Rogers was an evangelist for this. In fact, he wouldn't offer any kind of advice or direction. It was all just reflection, because in his mind, the person had to work it out for themselves, and he wasn't going to direct them in any way to do that, because then that becomes the therapist's agenda, not the client. So reflection is constantly just putting it back, getting them to process it over and over and over until they come up with their own solutions. And Carl Rogers didn't mind sitting in silence with you to do that. Silence. Now, let me tell you how torturing silence is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anybody feel comfortable with that? Neither did I. And that was just 15 seconds. Didn't you feel like, shouldn't he be saying something? Oh my God, what did he freeze? Did tech go out? I mean, we hate silence. And silence is part of being present to somebody, folks. Stop talking so much. And folks, I am preaching hypocritically to you right now. You know why? Because I'm the first one who wants to get in there and start asking questions and redirecting and understanding and helping the person move on, because I'm a fix-it person, right? And it took me a long time professionally to get that sometimes the most valuable thing you can do for somebody is to be present to them. You don't have to have all the answers. And how could you? All the answers to life? All the answer to somebody else's life? Come on, y'all. If you're that good, then you probably don't need to be in the position you're in right now, right? It's just that. I mean, I don't have the answers for everything. I can explore them with you, but what I can say is I get it. Man, that's got to be tough. That's got to be hard to go through. And you know what? I've been through some hard times too, and I'm not leaving. I'm going to stay here with you till we figure this out. That's what motivational interviewing says, right? Be present to folks, right? Sometimes that means you got to move towards them, sometimes step back, but listen, be willing to share that space, right? To allow them to speak into it, to tell you what they need. I don't always know that or assume that, right? But I can be present to what you're going through and let you know that I'm walking this walk with you. Okay. Now, I think that what I want to do is we had a request for a demonstration. So I want to mention this strategy, and then maybe we can do that. I was going to say, maybe we can do that smoking demonstration. Okay, sorry about that. We can do that demonstration of a smoking a personal conversation somebody smokes. Okay, now scaling is a really good strategy on how do you reach somebody, right? So let's say you kind of don't remember I talked about getting a baseline for how much the person smokes. Scaling is like just asking them on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you doing with this thing, this smoking? It could be getting enough rest, drinking enough water, exercise, whatever their thing is. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, where do you think you are today with your depression? I'm probably at a 7. Wow, 7. That's kind of high. Have you ever been a 9? Oh, yeah. And what does that look like? Well, a 9, wow, gosh, I wasn't suicidal, but man, I couldn't move. I just stayed at home and I drank the entire time. It was pretty bad. Really? Okay. That sounds kind of rough. Have you ever been a 5? Right? What does that look like? Well, a 5 is, I'm functional. I'm doing everything I need to be. I can still feel the depression. I'm making all this up. But what that does is give you context for how to move into a supportive space, right? So then I might say, well, okay, you're a 7, which is pretty high, but am I doing this? I might have flipped the numbers, but let's say I'm sorry, I said 1 is the worst and 10 is the best. I did it opposite. But let's say the person is at a 7 for high depression. and we're trying to get them to a 5, right? They might say, yeah, I'd like to be a 5 again. Really? What does that look like? How do you get there? What, how can we get you from a 7 to a 5? What did you do the last time that you were a 5 to be there and maintain that, right? So you're exploring options. And they might say, well, I notice when I keep cigarettes in the car, I I I tend to smoke more. Really? Okay. Would it be a hard thing for you to not put your cigarettes in the car? Would that change possibly the amount that you smoke? Probably, because I'm in and out of my car a lot. So every time I get in the car and there's cigarettes there, I smoke. So that might be something that works for you to kind of lessen the amount of cigarettes that you smoke. Oh yeah, I used to do that before. I don't know why I stopped. I just kept smoking more and more, right? So what you're doing is you're exploring options for how the person can meet their goals. And if they say, I need to stop smoking, I just need to stop, or my doctor says this is going to be imminent. My health is at imminent risk right now. Okay, so what is it that the doctor is prescribing? Is the doctor prescribing that you are weaned off, or does the doctor recommend you go cold turkey? Well, the doctor says I can wean off. Good. Okay, so you can wean off, because I know that stopping cold turkey can be very, very difficult sometimes. So you're right now, you said you're smoking how many? 4 packs a day? Okay. So what's a reasonable goal to get that to 3 packs a day, then 2, and then 1? How long do you think it would take for you to get to 3 packs a day? And they might say, well, probably at least 2 weeks. I'm making this up, folks. 2 weeks probably to get there. Okay. So what's the plan? What's your plan for getting to not smoke an extra pack, right? To get it down to 3 in 2 weeks. Is that you're going to give up a couple cigarettes a day, or what does that look like for you? So you're constantly in conversation about how they are going to do it and how you can support it. Okay. Questions, comments? Let me just pause there for a second.
We have a question. Can you use motivational interviewing in a group setting?
Oh, sure. I
And
just
how do
did.
you do that?
I mean, well, I did a demo, but I would do that in a support group in front of somebody. In fact, I would do it right now if somebody wanted me to. Now, this is assuming that the group understands the rules and dynamics of the group. So there's open sharing, there's privacy, so we're not sharing what happened in the group outside. You have to have all that stuff in place, right? So in other words, I would have the group members permission to have that conversation before. And if I didn't, then I would say, hey, Sarah, I'm getting ready to have a conversation with you, and I know we're in a group. Is that okay if they hear our conversation about how to help you, kind of thing? And she says yes, then it's on. She says, no, I'm not comfortable with that. Then Sarah, see me. Let's connect after this session. I see Sarah's hand up for real right now. Sarah, go ahead. I see Sarah's hand up. That's for real. I'm not making that up. Did I get that wrong, Milan?
No, 1 second. I'm trying. Sarah, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Or feel free to submit your question in the Q&A if it's not working.
Or anybody else, please. Now's a good time for interaction with you, or we could practice.
I have a question.
Yes.
What about if the person doesn't want to stop smoking? It's
Yeah.
just doing it because it's a doctor's recommendation, for example.
Well, okay. So when you say the person doesn't want to do it, does that mean that they're not going to do it despite the recommendation from the doctor? And they're sharing that with you? Or that, I mean, look, there's lots of, look, I don't want to stop eating ice cream. That doesn't make me stop eating it. So I'm just asking you more specific.
Yeah, I think that right now they're on the contemplating, like the contemplating stage where they have been health problems, where the doctor had already said something about it, the family had already said something about it. So they're contemplating on the idea, but they don't really want to stop.
Right. Thank you. That's a wonderful question. There's 2 things that I do. I enter into a conversation, a supportive conversation about what's available to the person. Like, are they aware of the consequences of their choices, right? Like, and I'm being dark, but right now, every last person in this room could shut down their computer and go drink themselves silly if they wanted to. That's a choice that you have. It's not a healthy choice. It's probably not a good professional choice, but everybody in this room right here, right now, including me, has the right to do that. So does the person that's sitting across from you. If they choose to ignore the health recommendation of their doctor, then you have to move into a conversation about, okay, are you aware of what can happen to you by ignoring the doctor's recommendation? Yeah, I get it. I get it. I get it. Okay. Are you prepared to deal with those consequences, which means you're putting yourself at risk for heart attack? You're probably not going to be able to breathe very well. I'm making this up. You know, you're probably not going to be able to breathe very well. Like, there's going to be some things that are going to start to happen. Are you okay with that? Now, folks, this is a tough thing, right? How do you support somebody in doing things that we know are unhealthy for them to do? Well, folks, I would encourage you to look at the things that you do that are unhealthy for you in your life. Everybody in this room doesn't do everything healthy all the time. It's a choice that you make. And it's a choice, probably you don't want people looking over your shoulder when you are having that extra bowl of ice cream. I sure don't. I get it, right? And I'll deal with the consequences. Now, it's okay, folks, to voice your concern because we are compassionate supporters. So it's okay for you to say, hey, look, you know, I'm really concerned about your health. I wish that you would take the doctor's recommendation seriously, but I'm still here for you if you choose to do a different path, right? You choose to walk a different path. I'm still in your corner, right? Which means, again, it's not about whether they succeed or not. They got to go fight that fight themselves. And when they fail, you need to be a safe haven for them to come back and have that conversation, period. Now, that's tough sometimes. But when people come for me, let's say for counseling, you know, a lot of my coaching is really about, okay, do you see the brick wall in front of you? Right? I mean, it really is that. Okay, do you see the wall in front of you? Yes, I see the wall. Okay, do you realize that by driving 50 miles an hour towards that wall, you could probably get hurt? Yeah, I realize it. Okay, and do you realize that you're not wearing your seatbelt, which means that this is probably life costing? Okay, I mean, there's different levels of response and feedback that you give in this, but you're not making the decision for them, right? You're a support agent for whatever they're going through. And just like you have the right to make unhealthy choices, you got to respect theirs. That doesn't mean you have to agree with them. You just have to understand where they come from. Because a person that feels understood, feels connected, which means they're going to be more open to your suggestions for alternatives, for resources. Does everybody get that? You're not the saving agent, right? Like, you're moving into a place to help them save themselves. And look, we're not always going to get that right. Have you gotten everything right in your life? Neither have I, right? We've all made some terrible mistakes, right? Think of your relationships. Oh my gosh, right? And think of what you need to recover from those painful incidents in your life. They need the same thing, but what they don't need is your judgment. They don't need to tell you you told them so. You don't need to kick them when they're down. They probably already feel bad, and you don't need to give them phrases like, "Oh, this too shall pass. It's green. The grass is greener on the other side. Tomorrow's another day. It'll get better." None of that helps a person. Ask them what they need, and then you can be honest about what. And look, folks. And I'm not saying, look, if you're not equipped to be in somebody's corner because they've chosen, let's say, an unhealthy path that you cannot support, then you need to get out of that relationship, folks. I'm not telling you, oh, you're stuck and you got to stay there. That's when you refer them to somebody else. If I'm not qualified or capable, look, I used to be a terrible counselor for depression until I got it. You know why? Because I thought the people that were depressed were just whining. So that they didn't want to make anything better. They just wanted to whine until I understood that sometimes being heard is the most valuable thing you can provide for a person, right? So it's not about you, it's about them. But if I feel like I can't handle what you have to offer, I'll say, you know what, look, I do mediation. And I just got referred on a mediation for a young woman who needed help repairing the relationship with her sister. When I met with her, oh my God, I got sister and everything else you could imagine in the world. I got broken finances, broken health issues, broken mental health, broken resources, overwhelmed. She's burnt out. She's just, I mean, I got the world. And I was like, you know what? I went back to the supervisor. I was like, you know what? This person needs more than just a healing relationship with their sister. I'm more than happy to continue that conversation with her, but this person needs a lot more than what I can provide or what was referred to me. You got to be honest about that. Otherwise, you could do more damage than good. I hope I wasn't being preachy with that, but I'm just being real and honest with you. And
So
sometimes it's a tough decision. Go ahead, my love. I'm sorry.
we have one more question. It says, Sal, are you familiar with restorative practices? I'm interested explicitly in outlining the combination of motivational interviewing with restorative practices.
Oh, outstanding. Yes, I am extremely familiar with restorative practices. I am an evangelist when it comes to restorative approaches to helping somebody change. And the most powerful, well, there's two versions of it. In restorative practices, we have what's called restorative circles, which I'm sure you're familiar with, but also restorative inquiry. Restorative inquiry is really phenomenal in helping a person to understand the harm that was caused them, right? Where that came from, the needs that come from that harm, and then helping that person based on their doable awareness, how to move towards healing. Very, very powerful. And I'm more than happy to continue that conversation with you. I apply restorative practices to practically any issue you can imagine. Racial equity, relationship building. I just did a workshop on grief and loss, all restorative, right? But it's about well, first of all, it's about the relationship you have with the person or persons, the questions that you ask for that help them reach clarity, and you're not healing them, you're moving them towards a space where they can access what they need to become healed. That's a great question. Whoever asked that, I'm more than happy to continue that conversation with you.
Sal, I just wanted to also quickly shout out your session on restorative parenting for building, maintaining, and healing relationships with children. I put a link in the chat for the workbook. Also, the demo video that Sal recorded with his daughter, Chardonnay. Y'all, you don't want to miss it. Make sure you check out those resources.
Well, I really, really appreciate those kind words. That's all love. I really appreciate that. But I didn't want to be self-promoting. But yes, we did do a session here recently, my daughter and I, on restorative parenting, which is offering a different way of how we communicate with our kids. And my kid, she's grown. She's a clinical social worker, but we still have those conversations. And the demo restorative inquiry that we do can go all the way back to when she was a kid to what's going on in our dynamic now. Thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate it.
So we had about 12 more minutes left, but I don't want to miss out on this last question. Stacy says, what about if the client is really down about how things are going all wrong? Would it be appropriate to acknowledge all the things they are accomplishing and goals they are setting, or validating the hurdles they are facing?
Okay, so read that one more time, Mylan, please.
What about if the client is really down about how things are going all wrong? Would it be appropriate to acknowledge all the things they are accomplishing and goals they are setting, or validating the hurdles they are facing?
Yeah, it's a good question. So a couple things. First of all, I'm always validating where they are. Wow, that's really hard. I can't even imagine going through that. What would I do? Kind of thing. So I'm validating where they are and the challenges that they're going through. What I try to do then is have conversations that move them to a place of what they can do as opposed to what they can't. That's what motivational interviewing is about. I didn't cover it, but if you got a wind of this slide here, where there we go. If you got a wind of this slide here, if you look to the left, right, you're trying to have I can conversations with the person. So the person might be overwhelmed about what they're not achieving and how heavy life is. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, life is like that. Sometimes we just feel beat up and don't want to move. What are some areas of your life that you feel like you can control or you can move in, right? So you move it to smaller circles so that with the potential for the smaller circle conversation to translate over into other areas of their life. When we are down and out, we tend to look at when life is gray, that's the filter through which we see everything. Everything is down and is dark, right? So you try to get them to see the light, and you have encouraging conversations about how to get there. When that client that I was telling you about, that was supposed to be about her sister, that ended up being everything, that's where my conversation went. Because I was like, well, this is not about your sister. What is doable in your world? What's something that you feel like you can manage or start to navigate in your world? So yeah, it's you always acknowledge where they are. You always reassure the person that you are there regardless. And then where they are open and comfortable to having conversations about I can doesn't mean I'll win, I'll achieve, I got it. I can means, okay, here's an area I think that I could probably start making lunches for my kids going to school, as opposed to whatever. I just made that up. Like what is it that they can do? Start having conversations around that. And remember, you can't, you're not resolving anything for them, and you couldn't do that anyways, right? You're not living their life. What you have to do is strengthen their perspective on options that are available to them, right? Does that make sense? Strengthen their perspective on options that are available to them so they can move towards that recovery. They can move towards that healing. And sometimes that's going to be very easy and in their face, and other times distant, and you're going to have to walk that walk with them, and it's a long path. But so is it for most of us, right? Okay. That's a great question. Thank you. Well, I'm going to tell you, you all asked some great questions. Well, I thought you were a quiet audience at first, but once the questions started coming in, I was like, "Ooh, I got to look. Now I got to go do research on motivational enhancement therapy because I got to ask that." Well, I honestly, and again, I don't claim to know everything, but that's not something that I'm familiar with enough to comment on it. So appreciate that. Anybody else before we close out? Okay, I want to make sure.
I just wanted to let you know that there are a lot of positive comments in the chat. People are saying you did a great job. So affirming you, Sal.
Hey, I'll take all the compliments and validation I can get. Just put them on in there. I'll accept all of them. No, sincerely, you were a great audience. I enjoyed going through this information with you. Make sure that you have my contact information. This is a temporary place for closure, but you can reach out to me at any time to continue it, or if you have questions. And I really appreciated the specific nature of your questions. And this isn't, look, and remember, this is not easy work. Don't ever fool yourself into thinking that it is. Look, that friend of mine that I told you that lost her brother and sister in the same 24 hours. This is a great example. When she called me and she told me that she lost her brother the night before to a failed kidney transplant, lost her sister the following day within the same 24 hours to cancer. I was like, wow, but I'm sorry. I don't even know what to say. That's exactly what I said. Why? Because saying, oh, I'm so sorry, kind of doesn't capture the gravity of that, right? Then I was like, okay, I'm on my way. Just, I need to get my things together. And I'm glad that I said that, because you know what she said? No, don't come right now. The entire family's here and I'm just overwhelmed. I'm so good, because look, that's me assuming the need. It's, oh, let me drop and go. She needs me, right? No, she's like, no, I need space right now. So when she said that, my follow-up was, okay, you let me know where and when you need me. When things calm down, reach out and I'm there, right? You got to respect their space. You got to respect their ability to be constructive agents in their own recovery. So she knew what she needed in that moment. And she didn't need another body of concern right then and there, right? So I respected that. And that's exactly what happened. She called me later. We had a deep conversation. I found out what she needed. I invited her to the grief and loss workshop. She came to that. She was wonderful. And all that helped, you know, her just kind of talk through things. You know, it's a dance, folks. It's a dance, but it's not a wrestling match. Okay, I appreciate everybody, and especially the support staff, Mylan and Bridget and Ashley. I mean, everybody has just been so wonderful. And anybody that I missed that I can't think of right now. They truly do uplift me and make me feel like I can. And so these spaces are important for that. I want to put that up. I didn't know if you wanted to revisit that, Mylan.
Yeah, so I'm going to hop in and close this out. Hey, everybody, I'm Ashley Singleton. I work with Intact. This is our last session of the CWOPS Training Academy series. If you have been joining us all along, you know that we've had sessions covering lots of different topics about how to engage in the community, empower communities. And so I just dropped a link in the chat for the website. Okay, so check back in about, give us like 2 weeks. We're going to have all of the recordings, all of the resources that are associated with this training academy on that website. We'll also send you all a reminder email to check out our website. Sal, this is not the last time. I hope you don't think you're getting rid of us, because we're inviting you back. So make sure that you're a part of our newsletter and that you're getting updates on all the trainings that we offer, so you can hear Sal again. And also make sure that you take the post survey. So we're going to close out this session. A survey will pop up. Once you fill out that survey, you'll be redirected on how you can request continuing education hours. Remember, there are 1.5 hours that are going to be offered at no cost to you for continuing education credits. So take that survey, let us know what other topics you'd like to hear about, and then also fill out that form for your CEHs. And with that being said, thanks so much for joining us for the Training Academy series. We appreciate you so much. We're going to email you the recording and slide decks and everything associated with today's session. And let us know if you need anything from us. We're here for you here at Intact. So thank you. I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And again, thanks to Sal and Mylan. Y'all take care.
Thank you for having me.